Hello, everybody. We are back with another one for you from Bocho's brother, and it is Art and Arcana, a visual history of Dungeons and Dragons. We're talking about start to finish Dungeons and Dragons. I just got this book from my wife, and I tell you, I'm excited. This is like, well, look at how thick it is. It's a big book. It's an art book. It's a coffee table book. It's not necessarily a book you will use in a campaign, but then again, the artwork you could use in your campaign if you wanted. So let's get a little perusal. This is a perusal. See if it's something you like. See if it's something you want to give as a gift to a friend or a family member. Remember, this is family friendly. Bocho's brother. We're just hanging out. I'm mostly just catching up with my buddies, sharing my stuff. It's not too professional. But if I did have Patreons, I would send a shout out to Jordan, Terry, and Niall. So, but here we go. Just a quick perusal. Let's see what Bocho's brother's been up to. The book starts off, you got this marketing from the 80s for Dungeons and Dragons. Who needs to hang around? I've got Dungeons and Dragons. So that's where I started. It all started back in 1974. And then as a kid, just like Joe Magniello, we were growing up with this stuff in the 80s. I wasn't really able to play until 2nd edition, but I remember my older brother having the books. And if you get this book, they'll kind of walk you through. He introduces you kind of to what Dungeons and Dragons is all about. And then you see here, this is kind of like the highlight of 5e. The great old days before the pandemic when Matt Mercer and company were playing live D&D at big events at theater halls. That one with Avernus was just the greatest. So this kind of introduces you here to Dungeons and Dragons. And then before each section, before each of the editions, you get kind of a cool art piece with a color overlay, kind of like you're looking through a lens to get a little hint at what's coming. And then they jump right into Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, Gary Gygax, 1974. So I wasn't even born yet when this one came out, but this is like really old school D&D. You see Kickstarters going around these days of people who want to kind of get back to that old school Renaissance, black and white artwork, everything just really with an innocent twist to it. Dungeons and Dragons, maps. And this is something you can just read, you know, at the end of the day or on the weekend. Or something, people will come over to your house and say, oh, what's that? And just take a little perusal through the book here. So this whole first section is kind of about Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. And then every now and then you get a little bookmark stop where they present one of the iconic monsters from Dungeons and Dragons, such as the Purple Worm. And what I was talking about with the artwork is back in 1974, you see everything is like, you know, just black and white kind of artwork like a friend from high school would do. And then it gets a little bit better in 1st edition with some color, but still kind of funky. Then you have 2nd edition, which is cool. That was one of my highlight editions. But 3rd edition, things don't really get like blow your mind artwork until 4th edition and 5th edition, in my opinion. So you'll get these throughout the book of the iconic monsters and a little background to what they're all about here and there. And then you get some like doodly little artwork, some fun anecdotes, stories, things that have been going on in the world of Dungeons and Dragons ever since the beginning. Tomb of Annihilation, or what was that other one? The Horrors of the Elemental Evil or something like that. We ran this Tomb of Annihilation and I actually went through this through that mouth. I won't tell you what happened, but definitely dangerous things happening there. Shout out to Niall for that campaign there. Another one, The Beholder. Here, I mean, they're just kind of silly. That's like inspired by the moon landing or something in 1975. And this one's just kind of a zany pizza meatball thing. And when it really gets cool is the second edition one, which is actually my favorite of the bunch. It was on the cover of the monster manual for second edition Dungeons and Dragons. But that iconic artwork also for the 5th edition monster manual for me is just, that's something you would want to have in a big poster on your wall. So you're starting to get a feeling for what this book is like. Interviews, marketing, different kinds of character sheets, little anecdotes. So it's a lot of fun. Demogorgon, right? We talked about Stranger Things being some program, a TV show on Netflix that kind of really brought back Dungeons and Dragons to its prime, along with 5th edition. And here you see Demogorgon at the beginning, just kind of a silly monkey face guy. Here's a little more creepy. This one looks quite different from all the rest, very zany, that one. And then these two, of course, are much more to my liking if you were ever going to encounter this thing, right? My party is kind of a lot of new players, so they're just learning now that the demons and the fiends of the 9 hells, so the demons of the abyss and the fiends of the 9 hells, are kind of two separate things who are at war. These things are total chaos and annihilation, whereas the fiends are kind of trying to make pacts and gather souls. And then, of course, you have the angels pouring into these spaces, trying to battle everything. So that would be kind of how to differentiate that if you're a Diablo player, as I am. I'm super into Diablo and bringing that into my world. But yeah, demons and fiends. Then they have Dragon Magazine, kind of the history of that, articles that were written, artwork. Just, I mean, any artist could pop up in this book. There's, oh, I don't know, at least over 50 artists, I bet, in this book. And they share, if it was the artist's favorite piece of artwork, they kind of put a little label there. And you're just able to get a little flavor for everything. This book has all my favorite artwork for D&D. My liking of the D&D artwork has kind of died, to be honest, after Tasha's Cauldron. Everything just got a little too wacky, a little bit too much fun and love, and so I'm moving on to other genres of artwork, but still very much into the mechanics of the 5e Dungeons and Dragons. And this piece, for any of you who were born in the 70s, will just stand out as something you saw laying around in your kitchen or in your, you know, in your dining room. Maybe an older brother had it, but this is the iconic monster manual of Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. And just that dragon is very stuck in my mind as an image. And this troll here as well. I had a brother who was playing this troll back in the 80s. The campaign. There's that purple worm, and these poor little adventurers are just, I don't think they stand a chance. Little pixie dude with his sword. And so that was all the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, and then it goes into the 1st edition with its monster manual, dungeon master guide, and player's handbook. So that's kind of where it all started for a lot of us. And there was the Satanic Panic. They had a lot of kind of devilish, fiendish stuff going on there. You know, you're going to Catholic church, but you got the D&D books, and parents are getting a little nervous and so on, and it feels a little dangerous and like you're up to something mischievous. But at the end of the day, it kind of turned out that D&D is actually a really healthy thing for people, for kids. It's therapeutic. And you don't have to play it with, you can fine tune it to whatever level of horror or scariness you want. You can play silly zany D&D if you want as well, without any of the more dangerous stuff, which is for another video. I'll be sharing with you how I kind of use role-playing games in school, and we don't use this kind of stuff for that. We have a more appropriate game that I will share on the channel later this month. Here we have Lolth, which is one of these iconic, the goddess of the drow. And, you know, drow, drits, I finally have read through those books. I'm in the 3rd book of the Dritz series, which are absolutely fantastic if you can get them on audiobook and you're just jamming with the Dritz series. And there is a picture of Dritz that will come up here a little later, so I'll give you a little update on that there. But this is another iconic book that was just lying around our house. And you know, what is this thing? Is it a Gith? It could be. The Gith are very much part of this Baldur's Gate game that's coming out. But this thing was so cool to just look at. If you're 7, 8, 9 years old, you know, you're used to kids' books, and you see that, it's going to blow your mind. The Demogorgon, the little lead figures. You know, let's not get lead poisoning, but the lead figures, though, there's something nice about the heft to a lead figure compared to the plastic and, you know, the 3D printer figures that we can end up using these days. And then there was the crash of TSR in 1983. I didn't really feel the crash because we had just started really jamming with Dungeons and Dragons mid 80s to the early 90s, 2nd edition and stuff. But I guess a crash happened here. This piece of artwork is fantastic. You see it several times in this book. And you can actually get some of this artwork if you ever see an ad pop up on Facebook for t-shirts. I got 2 t-shirts. One's a green one with this art piece, and another one is a t-shirt with the art piece that's on the cover of the book, a red one here. So I don't know, it's fun to kind of geek out, have your Dungeons and Dragons shirt, and just about any artwork you see in this book, it's available. It's out there. And you get the maps, the stories, and so I'll kind of fast forward us a little bit here, just because we're trying to just give you an idea. Is this a gift? Is this something you want to get? Does any of the artwork just stand out for you? Do you have a favorite piece of artwork from the book? Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. So this is after that regular 1st edition Dungeons and Dragons. They had the advanced. I guess it was the crash of TSR, because I didn't see too much of this around the house with the advanced Dungeons and Dragons. But we're getting to the main course. Don't you worry. Here's the Dritz, Doerden, the Drow from 1988, 1992, 1993, 2012. I think this is just the best artwork. If you're ever in Seattle, you can actually go to I think it's called Epcot Center, and they have kind of some different kinds of art pieces there. And one of the great art pieces was this one here, along with other artwork. I haven't seen the Dungeons and Dragons movie, but I tell you, if they made a Dritz Doerden trilogy, and they made it well, they made it dark, you know, with the right actors, everything in the right place. I don't know, dark. I don't know what movie I could compare to that would be along those lines, other than, I guess I would say, Starship Troopers. Just, I know it's a completely different genre, but it had that good feeling of just, holy cow. This is not for shits and giggles. This is the real deal. So, Dritz Doerden film. Let me know in the comments below if that's something you would be interested in seeing. And here we are. This is the meat and potatoes. This is the main course. This is your stew. This is your wholesome Dungeons and Dragons 2nd edition player's handbook. Everybody had one. This monster manual was kind of wacky, and you know, I wasn't a DM back then, so I didn't have it, but I remember seeing it around. It was like in this big folder that you would fill with the different monsters, papers, and then of course the Dungeon Master's Guide, which had this beautiful imagery of this arch wizard taking on a red dragon somewhere in astral space or the nether plane. Come on. And these little books here, right? The little portfolios, the little Almost felt leather bound, complete wizard's handbook. I remember having the complete gladiator's handbook for Dark Sun. And you felt like you had a little edge. It gave you new subclass options that you didn't get in your regular player's handbook. And then you can read about that here too. It's kind of nostalgic reading all of this stuff, and just takes your head to a good space in these crazy days. And that's where we get the introduction of the artist Brahm, who is alive and well. He's amazing. His artwork for this game, and then we have the Mind Flayer. You're going to see some of his artwork. Hold on here. There was Strahd. I want to get to the. Let's get to the Brahm artwork here quickly. Here we are, Brahm and Dark Sun, and he's actually an author now. So he's written several books. I have 3 of them. They are all excellent, and they include his artwork. But now Dark Sun, for me, is like the gemstone of Dungeons and Dragons. It is just such amazing. They had video games for it. It's harsh. It's a desert wasteland. It's like Scorpion King meets Gladiator meets just all your greatest ideas of being this survivalist in the desert, Thri-kreen, everything like that. And this is something that I think Wizards of the Coast is just not going to get anywhere near anymore with their new kind of, how will I say it? It feels kind of like Care Bears Adventures. Gummy Bears Adventures Dungeons and Dragons is where they kind of have headed after Tasha's Cauldron. So I'm actually not really getting any more Dungeons and Dragons these days from Wizards of the Coast. But thanks to the open license, we're able to get, really cool products if this is your thing. There's a Facebook group for Dark Sun, and, they've translated the 4th edition and 2nd edition into 5th edition if that's what you're running and that's what you want to play. So very cool to be able to jump back in, see what was going on with Dark Sun. They talk as well about the video games like Eye of the Beholder, like the Dark Sun video game. And the whole time you're just getting this delicious, wholesome artwork. Here's the Fall of TSR. I thought that was earlier, but apparently after Dark Sun, I guess it was the Fall of TSR because I didn't get any of these books here. So it's nice to see the artwork that was going on after Dark Sun, after 2nd edition. I never really played 3rd edition either. I heard that Wizards were way overpowered, and that's just about all I knew about 3rd edition. So I'll kind of flip us through quickly. Icewind Dale, that video game, a lot of us have played it, I'm sure. Look at this, say anything. Is that Vecna? What do you think? I mean, he's missing the eye, and the dragons in the book. So just everything about this book is just a perfect coffee table book. Something you got friends or family staying over for the weekend, you can have this out. They can be flipping through it. You can flip through it when you have some time off and just go down memory lane, enjoy the artwork. And I know they're currently working on another book that will be probably coming out soon about specifically dragons. So it's not a campaign guide or a subclass additional book, but it is just a specifically art coffee table book about dragons. But I'll tell you, this one will last you years. It's just not something you're going to sit down and read page to page, front to back, but you kind of just jump into a section that you find eye-catching. This one here, 4th edition. This is where I jumped back into Dungeons and Dragons. This was kind of more around the 2008, 2009, 4th edition. I bought a bunch of the books. The artwork and the system just didn't quite do it for me, but I wouldn't say that the artwork is terrible either. The artwork is delicious, although I haven't used it in any of my campaign because it just doesn't speak to kind of the world we're running. I don't know what I would say. It feels a little bit like Magic cards. That's a decent Tiefling though, and that's a decent Eladrin, and that's a decent Dragonborn. So maybe we can find a few set pieces to use in our campaign. 4th edition. What is it? It seems a little bit more comic book like. In Eberron. Eberron's a great book. They have it for 5th edition as well. The owlbear. The iconic owlbear. Look where it started. Just kind of goofy and wacky and very niche, very specific to that time period. And then as it evolved, it got better. The 5th edition one. I think the 5th edition one is usually the one I like best when it comes to these art pieces. And there's that funny demon thing again. I gotta include that in my campaign somewhere and find out the story behind it. Fire giants with the dragonborn fighting. That's a great action scene. I mean, take your time with it. Get this book and don't rush through it like I'm doing now. Look, they did a re-release of the original Advanced Dungeons and Dragons to have on your shelf with special dice, leather-bound book. They even had a Dungeons and Dragons video game that I bought, Dungeons and Dragons Online. I tell you though, it didn't feel very Dungeons and Dragons to me. Didn't quite do the trick. But take a look at this piece, you guys. Are you kidding me? Is that there and centered? This is fantastic. Look at this. There's this troll with a drow like wizard writing a card on the back, and now the party is surprising attack on the troll. And here like a undead shadow. Maybe this is the shadow realm here with this spooky dragon. Maps, more amazing artwork, illithid, mind flayers, history. Then we come to 5th edition, Dungeon Master Guide, Monster Manual, Player's Handbook, all that good stuff. Curse of Strahd, I have that. I tell you guys, it's hard to find a YouTube channel where people are like speaking positively and happily about D&D 5th edition. I don't know where it just caught on, but suddenly there's this trend to be like, boo, 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 5th edition and the OGL or the OCL and this and that, and we're going to go and play different games now. Why? You got all the books already. You don't need to buy more books. And you haven't got through all the books you already have. So you know the system. You're playing the game. The art's good. The story's good. There's plenty of homebrew. There's these things. These cartoons are a lot of fun. This one's for the Tomb of Horrors. I used this one for this Mount Vengeance adventure. They had made one of these White Plume Mountain. If you look it up, they have a White Plume Mountain one. And our party went all through White Plume Mountain, and these little cartoon strips really kind of capture the feeling, and it's easy to get your head around if you're the DM and you look at one of these. So those are easy to find. This is a fantastic art piece that I believe is found in Volo's Guide to Monsters or Mordekainen's. Right? The Last of Us, the Mushroom. This thing is more powerful though than some Last of Us thing. This is like a demon goddess or god or entity in the abyss. That's the demon of, I believe, could be slimes and funguses and all sorts of that stuff. Oh, amazing, man. If you haven't seen this before, this one you could sit at for hours and rediscover everything that's in here. If you're into crafting, making items, making potions, the artwork continues. Tiamat. Jeez, this just makes you want to get your players to a level where they can actually encounter these things. And then this harkens back to the image we saw at the beginning. Who needs to hang around? I've got Critical Role. Man, Critical Role was awesome. Seasons 1 and 2, excellent. I hung in there for season 3 for a little while, and then it just, I don't know what happened. I'm feeling that I'm getting that Care Bear Adventures feeling again. So Candela Obscura was pretty cool though, but I prefer a little less chatty chat and a little more slopping it up with the monsters and the figures on the table. Here you see, who needs to hang around? I've got Dungeons and Dragons. And this ad was kind of made to inspire the jocks and the cool kids in the class to play Dungeons and Dragons back in the 80s as well. So I love how they used that image, and then they did their own for Critical Role back in season 1. Very cool. Sanathar's Guide. Excellent there. And Mordekainen's. I got that book. And then here at the very end, they kind of line you up with the player's handbook. All the player's handbooks here. From 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th edition. And then all the Dungeon Master's Guides. And then all the monster manuals. So you guys, you just can't go wrong with 50 years of success. I don't think they'll ever kill Dungeons and Dragons. And don't believe the hype. If you love Dungeons and Dragons, don't let people, put you down and say you got to play something else. Be proud. Wear your Dungeons and Dragons t-shirt and regalia, and, have a good time if that's what you like. And here there's kind of references at the end, and that is it. So, making a comeback. Sorry I've been away for a while, you guys. It's been a crazy year. The pandemic ended and suddenly there was a lot of work to do, so I haven't had time to update the channel as often as I would like. But being a teacher means we're about to go on summer break, and that means more videos for my friends, and we will see you around again soon. Until next time, may you have an excellent Dungeons and Dragons experience. See you later.